What's up, fam? Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're having a great week, but per usual, it is about to get so much better because I have two people in the house today who happen to be related to me, but are some of the coolest, most amazing, inspiring, and hilarious people ever. I have my Uncle Alan and Aunt Lisa on the podcast. Aunt Lisa, this is your second time.
Yep.
Alan, this is your first time.
The maiden voyage.
So
Here
let's
I am.
go. Let's go.
I love your new set. It's
I know.
amazing.
It's pretty legit.
Yeah,
Not going to lie. So, Alan, you lead Unashamed podcast, and that's good here. And we are always back and forth on the charts. Y'all are my main competition.
That's why we love having you on our podcast, because then we pass you in the ratings
that week.
Because of that week.
Maybe it'll happen to me this week.
Maybe that's right. Maybe we'll puff it.
I love it. Well, everyone gets asked this who comes on the podcast, and I wasn't going to do it to y'all because you've been on. But since you're on for the first time, I'm just going to hit you because you probably don't see this coming because I doubt you listen to my podcast, and I'm not offended by that. But this is just going to come out of left field. Alan, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice I've ever been given is I need to listen to Sadie's podcast.
Word.
Because you're right, I haven't. Probably the one that sticks out the most, Sadie, is never compliment bad cooking. Because if you do, you'll eat it the rest of your life.
That's good.
That's what Dad told us.
That's actually good advice.
Now, I found out later you can be, sensitive. You can be supportive. You can be, this tastes funny. You don't have to be, like ugly about it. But it was actually great advice because Lisa's a great cook. So, but if you say it's good and it's not,
then you're stuck.
You're stuck. That's where you're going to be. So
that is
you don't get this size,
so
Sadie, by not, adhering to cooking advice when you're young. So
I cannot. Alan has had some recent, Mama K is pretty brutal with her comments to you lately. And
what she said, and again, I give her a little bit of a pass because, she's been having some health issues. So for a while she was on some weird meds, but she never quite went this far. She told me, well, I thought that when you got cancer, that you lost weight and got thin. And so I assumed she was talking about Lisa, because Lisa had cancer. And I said, well, sometimes you do, Mom. She said, well, why are you not skinny? And I was like, well, I don't have cancer, Mom, as far as I know, number one. But two, thank you for pointing out that I'm fat, The woman that birthed you.
So
we are one, but that doesn't mean that my cancer transfers over to him.
And she went, oh, yeah, that's right. It's Lisa that has cancer.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, you're right. But then she didn't say, and I think you look great. Just didn't even drop me a crumb. Just like, okay, I got it.
Oh my gosh, our family is so brutal, but you got to love it. It was
like it's your dad's.
His roast.
His roast.
Yeah.
And I got him pretty good on his past hairdos.
That was
and then
so
he
good.
ripped me on being fat. So it was really but we're so much alike. And people were like worried. In fact, Bella, bless her heart, she got worried. She even had to give me a little positive shout out. She was just so afraid I was going to be hurt. I said, Bella, I taught him how to do it. It's okay.
True.
He gets it from me. So it's
that
really
is so true. Our family is definitely like, if you can dish it, you got to take it.
That's it.
And Dad's roast. So when my dad turned 50, my mom threw him like a big roast because Dad roasts everyone. Yeah. But also he does like getting roasted. But when he's roasted, he turns the fire up. You're getting it double.
And he gets to go last.
And he gets to go last.
It's his roast. So. And he did. He was masterful.
Scary.
I was impressed.
It was masterful. It was really impressive. Well, you came out and it was hilarious. Alan starts roasting all of Dad's hairstyles over the years.
Because I had a PowerPoint set up with all the different eras.
We have to put the pictures on YouTube.
Yeah, you got to show that.
For sure.
It's so good.
We'll put it. And then at the end, Dad comes up and it was a roast. It was a roast, but it was hilarious.
It was good.
But no, that is hilarious. Memo, okay. Oh my gosh. But to your advice, a lot of people come in here, they give good advice, but that's actually very practical advice. That's so true because I actually know someone It's like some older people in my life. And one time they told one of their friends that they love a certain pie that they make, but they didn't really like it, but they just said that. And every single year for the holidays, that person makes them the pie because they think it's their favorite, but they really don't even like it. That's what happens when you compliment
It's really
bad
not
cooking.
fair to the person cooking the bad food.
It's not fair.
Because they think they're doing well.
Yeah.
So you just have to find a nice way, to tell them that, it's okay, but, which is what we do. So.
Do you?
Yeah, but I got in trouble for that one time.
What was that?
Somebody asked me if I liked their hairdo.
At church.
Oh,
and
no.
I said, well.
And I was the preacher back then. So they're asking the preacher's wife.
And, I was like, well, if you like it, then I'm happy for you, but it's just not my style.
Which was a nice way.
That's a nice way to say it.
Is that not, should I just lie and say, oh, yeah, I love it. Great. I'm going out tomorrow and getting one. No, that's not what I should say.
So classic church.
Yes.
So the husband calls me.
Oh, no.
My wife is so upset about something your wife said. And I said, Lisa? It's like something Lisa said. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, what was it? Well, she said she didn't like her hair. And I said, she just walked up and said, I don't like her hair? Yeah. Of course, this is what happens over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, babe, what did you say about this person's hair? And then she told me, and I was like, oh, good grief.
Well, she asked.
Yeah.
Okay, this is hilarious because, we don't get to sit and talk all the time, which is really sad because we live right beside each other.
We're literally next door
and
neighbors.
I literally need to walk over and talk to y'all. But what's crazy is I see so much of myself in y'all right now. I'm like, this is why I am the way that I am. This is a Robertson family. Because literally last week I was sitting with some of my best friends. They were like the girls I live with in Nashville. And they were telling all these stories about me being the honest friend. They're like, we need you back in our life because you would tell us when we need to shave our mustache and when we needed to. I was like, well, yeah. And they were laughing, thinking that was so funny that I would do that. And I'm like, but are you grateful? Do you look better? Yes.
Yeah,
do you have a mustache?
Exactly.
No. And so it's funny, but I remember when somebody one time asked me if I think that they sing good. They're like, do you think I have a good voice? And I said, well, is that well? And I said, I wouldn't try out for American Idol if I were you, but if you sing at church, then yes. And it's so funny because
that's a great way
in
to
my
put
mind,
it.
because I'm like, you're good for church choir, but don't try out for American Idol. And I said that because I just remember back as a kid when Simon Cowell was on American Idol. Did y'all used to watch it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he was brutal, right?
Yeah.
And they would always say, who told you were good? Who did this to you? Because these people would come in, they'd be horrible. And then they would get embarrassed on national TV. And then they'd be like, all my friends told me I was so good, all my family. And so when this person said to me, am I good? I was like, oh no, she's going to try out for American Idol. I have to tell her. I have to be the one.
She's going to get on there and they're going to say, who told you were good? Well, my friend Sadie told me that I had a great voice.
Exactly.
So Sadie, so let me give you the second half of the best advice I ever got. Since we went here, I just thought of it. One of my professors in college told me, don't ask the question if you can't stand the answer.
That's true.
That is another great piece of advice. So if someone asks you something like that, and what are you supposed to do? Are you going to be honest? You're going to lie?
That's that. We just watched that movie when he says, you can't handle the truth. Yeah. And it's that's true. If you ask the question, you got to be able to take the honest response, which I really think I'm so grateful our family is the way that we are. And I think that's kind of secret sauce. It's being able to laugh at yourself and being honest with each other. And I think that's something that sadly the world is missing because people are so sensitive. People can't handle the truth literally because people are too easily offended. And I think that's what keeps people from being honest about important things too in life because you're so scared of how people are going to react. The internet's going to react, all the stuff. Speaking of being unashamed, that's kind of y'all's thing. Don't be ashamed of the things that are true of the gospel, which I think is pretty cool.
And now we add to it that the reason we can be unashamed of the gospel is because Hebrews 2:11, he's unashamed of us.
That's good.
That's
cool.
And that's why he calls us brothers and sisters. And, you just said that a minute ago. It made me think about the show because you were a teenager when we first started doing the little duck show now, as we call it. And so you grew up in that. But really the whole show, the comedic part of the whole show was that.
Yeah.
That we could whatever was going on, some crazy setup right here in this warehouse, that at the end of the day, we were all still family. We loved each other. I mean, we never let those things become bigger than they should have been.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I'm excited to dive into a full conversation, and we are going to talk about you having cancer and overcoming it and all the things. But first, let's just back all the way up, because you've kind of given some Easter eggs to some of the ideas that you are a pastor's wife, overcoming cancer. But how did you guys meet? How did y'all's relationship start? Friends, it is summertime and the Louisiana heat struggle is so real. Staying cool in these summer months can be such a challenge, especially when it's time for bed. Your nighttime temperature can have a huge impact on the quality of your sleep, so I'm so happy to tell you about Miracle Made Sheets. Miracle Sheets use silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA to help keep your body at the perfect temperature all night long, giving you the best chance at a full night of quality sleep. Because waking up sweating or shivering is just the worst. These silver-infused sheets also prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, so you'll sleep better knowing your Miracle Sheets are cleaner and stay fresher for up to 3 times longer than other brands. Plus, preventing all that bacteria can actually lead to cleaner skin, fewer breakouts, and less acne and allergies, so sign us all up for that. We want our beds to be cool at night and clean, but we also want them to be comfy, and Miracle Sheets are just as soft and comfortable as other luxury brands, but without the ridiculous price tag. The first time we tried Miracle Sheets, we were completely sold. Christian and I love them so much, we ended up ordering another pair for our bed so that we didn't have to, switch to any other sheets, and we ordered some for our guest bed. We love it so much. Go to trymiracle.com/woe to try Miracle Made Sheets today, and whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40% off, and if you use our promo code WOE at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20% off. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/woe and use the code WOE to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/woe to treat yourself.
You want to go or you want me to?
I'll do it.
Go ahead. She was a stalker.
Yeah.
She was a stalker.
I'll just throw that
So
in.
are you going to do it or do you want me to do it?
No, you can do it. Just throwing that out there.
That's so real.
So I was in the 6th grade and he was in the 8th grade.
Wow.
And it was right when they just moved to the river. And so he came to my school as a new student. And of course I saw him and then your dad, who was Jess at the time.
He would have been a kindergartner or first grader probably.
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
So that's how young he was.
And then,
and
then Jace, who was then Jason. Everybody's names have changed.
Jason and Jess.
Yeah, and Alan, but now he's Al. So everybody's got different names. But anyway, he came to my school and I saw him and I followed him every day at recess.
You were a stalker.
I really was a
That's
stalker.
facts.
Yeah.
I would have her arrested.
Yeah.
Or marry her.
Yeah. But what I tell him is I say, when you see a good thing, you go for it,
Right.
The problem was he never noticed me.
Oh, dang.
Because I was 2 years younger.
I was kind of a
2
big
grades
deal
younger,
back then, Sadie.
Yeah.
In 8th grade, I was Mr. Pinecrest.
He peaked in the 8th grade.
Wait, wasn't Dad Mr. Pinecrest
He was.
too? Y'all were owning
you know who
it.
wasn't Mr. Pinecrest? Jace. Yeah. We discussed this on the podcast recently. So I was, Willie was, Jeff was, no Jace.
Oh my gosh.
Just say it. Just throwing that out there.
Well, have you guys heard that someone has said before that the only difference between like a stalker and the person you're going to marry is if you like them back? Because most of the people appear to be stalkerish, but if you like them back, no problem. But if you don't like them back,
then
stalker.
It gets creepy.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So you're 2 grades younger, you notice him, but you don't notice her because you're Mr. Pinecrest thriving.
She's gawky and young.
Yeah.
So how did it change?
Well, so, out there where we lived, so we went from kindergarten to the 8th grade at one school, 9th grade at another school, and then 10th, 11th, and 12th at West Monroe High.
It's kind of a stair-stepper back in those days.
And so the next time that I saw him, even though we only lived 5 miles apart, the next time that I saw him, I was in the 10th grade, and he was in the 12th grade. And, so now I'm the new student at school. But, a long time ago, we used to go around and around at McDonald's. That's how we met people, on Friday and
Right up
Saturday
here.
nights.
Same one on
way.
Thomas
Yeah.
Road that's here. But
Yeah.
back in those days, that was it. That was the only, like fast food place. There was that and
Wow.
Bonanza. And so everybody in high school just drove around that parking lot all
That's
at different
so
points
funny.
in the night. That was our connecting place.
And then
Wow.
it was Macmillan Mall, so there was a mall there. So sometimes people would be in the mall parking lot. But so anyway, so I saw him one night, and he looked in my window, and he looks at me and he goes, "Whoa!" And so I tell people that is redneck for you've changed. Wow, you've changed. You've grown up.
Actually means you filled out.
You filled out.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, in a good way.
Because, and here's why I say that. When you're in the 6th grade, I had big red glasses. I had braces. I was as tall as I am now, and I weighed 75 pounds, But by the time I got to the 10th grade, I had contacts. I didn't have braces. And I weighed maybe 100 pounds by then. And so I'd filled out,
Yeah.
Back
you
in
had
those
curves
days-
in all the right
Looking good.
places.
Sadie,
Not big curves.
Back in
but,
those days, we would have said if she were a president, she would have been Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln, no.
That's what we say.
That is
back.
so
No one
cheesy.
This is
bring
the
that one
80s.
back.
This is early 80s.
No
That's-
one bring that
that's
one
what we
back.
say.
That's not going to work for you. Sometimes we give relationship advice. That's not it. Well, that is so funny because, oh gosh, just thinking about that. Because Two Mama's been on the podcast several times, and she got I think her senior year won most beautiful, and she always says, no, that should have been most improved. People were just surprised because she describes herself very similarly with the glasses and the braces and about 75 pounds. And then all of a sudden it's whoa, actually, you turned out good.
Yeah, that's right. Most improved. I
Yeah,
guess.
most improved. So he looks in there, he says, whoa.
So I asked her out.
He asked me out that night. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, so when we're going to go out? And she said, well, whenever you ask me. And I didn't know that she had been aware of me from way back years
Right.
earlier. And so she's like, well, yeah. So we'll meet me here tomorrow night, so at this time I have to go ahead and tell you, I was a prodigal. I was in church. I looked like I had it on straight, which I call myself a double secret agent because I knew the songs. I'm on the 3rd row. The people that, the little old ladies in church loved me because I was just such a cute kid and, pinched my cheek. But I was not a good person. I was living a double life. So I didn't have any character or integrity back then. And so I had her meet me at McDonald's the next night, wasn't it? And so I didn't go get her, pick her up. Just terrible. Everything I look back, everything I did wrong.
First strike with my mother.
First strike out of many strikes. We went way past 3. But anyway.
He struck out quite a few times.
So I show up with two of her cousins in tow, 2 of her male cousins that are friends of mine, but we like to drink together and all that. So we pick her up at McDonald's, and after a long night of that kind of stuff, and Lisa had no idea, and she was a pretty good girl at this point. So now I've added corrupter of, young women into my stash of bad behavior. And they wind up at a strip club. I'm in the car passed out, and Lisa's there, and she's 15 years old.
Wow.
So that was our first date.
Wow.
So you'd think it would go up, but it continued to spiral.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm one of those people. There's a saying out there that is, it's best to learn from other people's mistakes. But I'm not that person. I have to make the mistake myself, So I went back for 2nd and 3rd and 4th,
Wow.
And so we were together a few months, and then I graduated, and like I said, my life was out of control. Lisa and I had an immoral relationship, which I introduced her to that as well. And then I just left. I mean, I took off from New Orleans. Dad had confronted me about my lifestyle, and at that time I just turned 17. I graduated high school, and I was really had a lot of anger toward Dad, and I think it was just old stuff. But it was me. I mean, it wasn't him. He had changed his life. He was doing great. Jace and I fought like cats and dogs because he knew what life I was living. He tried to keep ratting me out to my parents, and to everybody else. And nobody would listen to him because I was such a good liar.
Jace the rat.
So it's funny now that we're so close. But, and
Wow.
so, I just left her. I broke her heart. I dumped her and, just left her here in West Monroe. And she was still in high school, obviously.
Wow.
And then I was gone. And I just went off down there to supposedly to find myself and to work. But, it was just to live a worse lifestyle.
Wow.
So it just kind of went down from there.
Well, and to like fill in the gap for people listening, because so many people have seen The Blind now. Al is the first son, so the little kid you see in the movie that's helping Mama Kay was you. And I think, for people making that connection, you have been through so much. Like you had seen a lot of hard things. And then, Peppa Phil gave his life to God. They're going to church, but still, like there's a lot of stuff there. So when Peppa Phil confronted you, do you think you held resentment to him, like, who are you to confront me when you live this life?
That was it. You nailed it, Sadie. Because in my mind, like I was so thrilled when he came to Christ. I mean, like, because all of a sudden our lives were finally better. But when I started messing up myself, it was just a reminder. What's amazing is I was doing exactly what he was doing to Mom.
Wow.
Like in the movie, projecting all of his lifestyle onto her. Because in the movie, he's like, and he did it. I remember it, being a kid. He was being unfaithful, so he would always accuse her of being unfaithful.
Wow.
It's just like everything he and Satan had going on, he projected that to other people. And that's exactly what I was doing back to him.
Wow.
Now, I wasn't bold enough to be very vocal about it because I was kind of still afraid of him. But inside, that's what I felt. And you're right. I then I was resentful. But, Mom had depended on me to help take care of Jace and Willie.
Mm-hmm.
And, here I was now. That's why they just couldn't believe I had gone this bad.
Wow.
Because, I had been so good.
Because you had been so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a mom can definitely be difficult, and then something beautiful can happen that makes it all worth it. But for moms out there with unplanned pregnancies, motherhood can seem so overwhelming and impossible. And that's where my partners at Preborn step in to help. Preborn provides free ultrasounds to moms with unplanned pregnancies so that they can meet their babies for the very first time. Once a mom hears her baby's heartbeat for the first time, she's actually twice as likely to choose life. So this work truly is saving lives. Preborn has helped mothers choose life for over 280,000 babies so far, which is a huge deal. But Preborn doesn't just stop at an ultrasound. They also provide love, support, and free counseling for up to 2 years so that new moms have everything they need to start their motherhood journey off on the right foot. You cannot underestimate the power of an ultrasound, but also even after you have the baby. I mean, you guys know my story of having Honey and how we had a little bit of a traumatic birth, which led me into having postpartum anxiety that I didn't see coming. And so walking through that with the counselor was so helpful. So knowing that we're not only providing people with ultrasounds, but also help after, I've personally experienced the benefit of both, and I'm so grateful that we're getting to give that to others. One ultrasound is just $28 or $140 can save the lives of 5 babies. Preborn receives no government funding, so our help as the pro-life community makes a huge difference in the lives of these families. Together, we can help mothers choose life. Please join us in the fight today. All gifts are tax deductible. To donate, go to preborn.com/Sadie. That's preborn.com/Sadie, or dial pound 250 on your cell and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and use the keyword baby. And then when you went to New Orleans, you were just in high school. So dated other people, continued down a dark lifestyle. What'd your life look like?
Well, I was looking for love in all the wrong places. That was a song back whenever I was that age. To me, whenever I gave myself to Alan sexually, then, and I was a little naive, but I thought that meant we'd be together forever, because it was something special that I gave to him. But that's not how it went. So, after 6 months, he leaves. And I just spiral completely out of control. I'm drinking, drugging, sleeping around with guys, driving to places and not knowing how I got there when I woke up the next day.
Wow.
I mean, just very scary stuff being a mom of girls, knowing all the things that could have happened to me.
Wow.
Even things that may have happened to me that I have no idea, that they happened. So, so that went on for 2 years, until he came back. And But during that 2-year period is whenever I found out I was pregnant. I was 16 years old. And so I really didn't go to church except for, like Easter, Christmas, all of those celebratory times,
You didn't have a relationship with Christ.
I had nothing,
Yeah.
And so I really didn't feel like I should go to somebody at church and talk to them about my issue, or my problem is what I would have said,
Wow.
And so really the only people I had to talk to were my parents and my mom. The words that she said to me was, she said, "You just need to get an abortion." Well, I said, "I don't know what that is." Nobody I'd ever known had done that before. And so she told me, she said, "Well, what's in your body right now is just a glob of tissue. And all they're going to do is go in there and take that glob of tissue out." But, I think back and even at 16, I had the thought, well, I wonder when it becomes a baby. If it's just a glob of tissue now, so how long does it take, know? So it was just that little idea in there that something just didn't add up. But so I said, okay. And that kind of fixed my problem because the guy that I was dating, I didn't care for anyway.
Wow.
And in the back of my mind, and this is terrible because, this is a life that was taken. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, what if Alan comes back? He's not going to want me with a baby,
Yeah.
And so, but that's just where
That's
I was.
real. Yeah, that's
right.
so honest.
That's
so
where
honest.
I was. And so, so I told her, I said, okay, I'll go do it. So the next day, I went and done that. I went to the clinic and had that done. And it was a terrible time. The day that I went was, it was the coldest, darkest, loneliest place that somebody could ever go.
Wow.
And she was by herself.
And it's almost like, when you walk in, you feel death,
Yeah.
And so I had it done that day. And, they tell you that, so there's 3 things that they told me that day. One was that it was a glob of tissue, which we know. They knew. They're medical professionals. They knew that was a lie. The next thing they tell you is that, the next few days you'll be sore, just take it easy, but you'll be back to normal, before too long. And, you'll have, nothing will be wrong with you. You'll be perfectly fine. And that wasn't true because I had Anna at 9.5 weeks early. She was 1 pound and 15 ounces when she was born.
Wow.
12 inches long. I had Alex and she almost came 4 months early.
Wow.
But they were able to put me on bed rest, so I kept her. And then I miscarried with the 3rd one. And so they did something that day. So that's not true, So the 3rd lie, and that's what I say, these are all lies that they knew, but, they tell them every day. It's just their job. And so the 3rd one that they told me was that after you leave here today, just forget this ever happened. Just go on, live your life, forget this day, and you'll be okay. But again, I don't think that's possible for you to not remember that you've taken a life, And at the time, maybe I didn't feel as though that I was taking a life because they had all said this is just a glob of tissue. But I think there was something in the back of my mind that said, no, there's something's not right about what they're telling you,
Yeah.
And it's true because it's one of the most regretful things that I'd ever done.
Wow.
But like you, we serve an amazing God.
That's right.
Who can take that guilt and that shame and he put it on the cross. And I no longer suffer with that anymore. I still have regret because I have 2 children. I have 6 grandchildren, 7 if I count Joey now that Carly's married. But you just think about that. You had another child, more grandchildren, just somebody to to add to the family. And, you know, for me to say, well, maybe Alan wouldn't date me whenever he came back. I mean, that's not a fair statement, you know, because then I'm saying what he would do, and I don't even know what he would do.
Yeah.
Whenever he came back, he was a new creature. So who knows what he would have done.
What's amazing is because of Lisa being honest about her past and being a teenager and struggling, she now, for the last 10 years, we've been traveling all around the country.
Yep.
Speaking on behalf of pro-life causes and a lot of pregnancy centers.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the post-abortive women that have not been able to share that and are carrying that burden. And yet when they hear Lisa share it, because they know her from the show or whatever, they just collapse into her arms. I mean, like, we've been signing books and lines and people just come up and you just have to stop everything and take a minute because someone is pouring their heart out.
Wow.
So, you know, just you're seeing an opportunity, you know, to share Christ with people.
I got my first tattoo when I was like 18, I believe, and I had thought about it for a really long time. My parents, you know, told me to think about it, I think for a year. So I thought about it at least for a year and got it, and I was so nervous, all the things, but keeping my tattoos looking their best is definitely important. And at this point, you know, 18 was almost 10 years ago. So that's why I'm pumped to talk to y'all about Mad Rabbit. It's a tattoo aftercare brand founded by two friends with a passion for ink who wanted to create simple, effective, natural products to preserve and improve tattoos. Mad Rabbit's most popular product, the Tattoo Bomb, sells once every 90 seconds. So they're killing it. Their Tattoo Bomb revitalizes, replenishes, and preserves tattoo ink using clean, natural ingredients. It works for both old and new tattoos and on all skin types. Mad Rabbit is truly the most effective tattoo aftercare, with 94% of people reporting that it helped preserve their tattoo's depth, 88% reporting more vibrancy, and 87% of users saying that their ink looked more intense. Plus, Mad Rabbit offers other products like tattoo sunscreen, soothing gels, lotions, and more. And the best part is that it's all delivered directly to your door, so you don't have to go searching the shelves for something to help your ink look better and brighter. My husband, Christian, actually just got a tattoo in Israel, which was really exciting and super cool. And so he started using Mad Rabbit on that, and he loves their product. We found it when we were in Copenhagen, and we got these tattoos, and they had Mad Rabbit there. And Christian was like, man, that branding is so cool. And then he ordered some more whenever he just got his tattoo from Israel, which reminded me to be using it as well for mine, because again, it's not just for new ones, it's for old ones too. So now is the time to try out Mad Rabbit. They preserved over 3 million tattoos, and they got an exclusive offer for Whoa, That's Good listeners. So if you go to madrabbit.com/Whoa25 and use the promo code Whoa25, you'll receive 25% off. That's 25% off when you head over to madrabbit.com/Whoa25 and use our promo code Whoa25. That is so cool that you said that, because I was just about to say what's so amazing about you sharing your story is, like, you know, for the listeners, they don't know the end of the story and know what you do now. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, how amazing that she's been able to, like, use one of the coldest, darkest days of your life to now help other people, which is the story of the gospel, like the darkest day in history. But then, you know,
That's right.
Christ resurrected, and then that made that dark day no longer the darkest day, but like a Good Friday. So it's like, yes, this is a different story as far as you do have regret for it. It's sad. Yeah. But God has also redeemed so much in your heart and in your life and in your story. Yeah. And now you get to go out and help other women find that same redemption story through the gospel. And it's so crazy because I was at a retreat for women a couple years ago. It was actually right after I had Honey, and I was like going to the retreat, not speaking at it. I was just attending. And one of the things we did, which I thought was such an amazing thing that they like allowed for us to do. So there was equal amount of like volunteers helping with the retreat as people go into the retreat. So everyone had like somebody to like kind of help them walk through it. So all of the people going, we kind of filled out a list of like things that we have done in our life. Like it was anonymous. Like no one knew whose paper was whose. And it had like all these different things that people might have hidden. So like you circled the hidden sin that you've had, or maybe people know about it, but still something you went through. And then the the volunteers all picked up the papers. So then they did this thing where they were like, okay, whatever it was, the sin. And then the volunteers would stand up on behalf of if their paper said it or not. But you didn't know who did it. So it was nice because it wasn't like singling someone out. You weren't having to like carry the shame of it. You knew these people were standing on behalf of someone in the room. When they said abortion, it was like half the room stood up. And then because like someone stood on their behalf, the next day people started sharing that they were the ones that had the abortion. And like they were saying they never shared it with anyone before, but it gave them the courage when they saw how many other people in the room had. And then it was like person after person, like, I've never shared this. I've never shared this. That was the first time I ever circled it on a page. Like this is the first time ever. Yeah. And even just like the freedom that came from not keeping it in the dark anymore was just like amazing to sit in that room with those women who were sharing and like connecting with one another and crying with each other and hugging each other, holding each other, because it is hard, you know, it's so hard. But then to be like, okay, God, what Jesus did on the cross is big enough for even this, and he's going to redeem this. And so I just love that you share your story, because even you saying like, this is just honest, this is how I felt, is exactly how so many people feel. Like, what if the person won't stay with them anymore? What if they won't get married? What if, or their parents said, you should do this, you should fix the problem, or wise counsel in your life is saying, this is the best route to go, but something in you is going, I don't think so, you know? And so I just am so thankful for how you share your story and now how you advocate for it. And I think a lot of it is just people don't know, people aren't educated as much. And that's what one of our sponsors is, like a pro-life. And it's Every Life. And it's so cool because whenever it says when people hear the heartbeat for the first time, they're like twice as likely to make the decision to keep the baby, just because when you know it's life, you know, it's not just a glob of tissue. It's amazing how that shifts in your mind. So thank you.
I do a subscription to Every Life.
Do you? That's awesome. So thank you.
Take it to our pregnancy center. Yeah.
Sharing that part of your story. So when you came back into her life, or I guess back home, were you thinking about her? Like, how did y'all get reconnected?
Yeah, so I was in New Orleans, and while her life was spinning out of control here in our community, I was spinning out of control down there. And I had a massive altercation. I was seeing a woman who was married, and she was lying about that. I was lying about how old I was. Everybody thought I was 21 because that's what I told them. But I was actually only 18. And so everything was built on lies. And finally, one day, her husband tried to separate my head from the rest of my body.
Oh my gosh.
And out of my survival of this major altercation, I just sat there. I was in New Orleans. I was actually in Kenner, which is outside. And I just sat there on that curb and thought, you know, if I stay here, I'm going to die. Because it's just, you know, it provided me a moment. And it's just, you know, like a lot of things where you have an experience where you almost die, you do some soul searching. And that's what I did that day. And a police officer sat down next to me and was so kind. Everybody else was not kind, but he was, and helped me through that moment. And he guided me back to here, and just made such a difference in my life. I can't wait to meet him in heaven and tell him how
that's cool.
And say, you know, that word you gave me, that you made the most of every opportunity.
Wow.
You know, which is what it says in the scripture. Because that day you had an 18-year-old that was seeking, and you provided a pathway.
That's
so
cool.
You never know. And anyway, when I got back home, I decided so mom and dad just totally embraced me. You know, I had a speech prepared just like the Luke 15 kid, you know, the prodigal.
Wow.
And I never even got to give it. You know, they were just like,
that's so cool.
Welcome. Dad's line was, hey, we got duck calls to build.
Wow.
And so I always say that night we killed the fattened catfish and had a celebration because,
awesome.
You know, a lost son had come home. And so it was really great. And so I was just like in this honeymoon Christ period where it was just me and the Lord. And I was going to school at ULM, and I was working for Dad. And I decided I was just not going to date because like me and women did not, I mean, like, and it was me, I was the problem. But I just thought, you know, Lord, you were single, Paul was single, you know, I'm just going to go that route. That lasted about a month. And I realized I didn't have that gift. And so, I thought about Lisa because I always knew, even though I treated her so badly, she really loved me. She cared about me. I never forgot that. And girlfriends in between or whatever her life had become, I knew that she was crazy about me. And so I thought, well, if I can get her to Christ like I've been brought to Christ, then this is a woman I can build a life with. And so I called her up and literally out of nowhere. I mean, we had not talked in 2 years. And so I called her up and, I said, hey, I'm back, And she said, oh, I knew, I heard, because we're all in a small town.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I heard you're dating some guy, And she said, yeah, it's serious. I mean, we're talking about getting married. She's still in high school.
Well,
He's like, we're talking about getting married when I get
I was
high
a
school.
senior, yeah.
Yeah.
were you being serious or did you just want him to
I was
know?
serious.
Oh, you were for
Yeah.
real.
And she was trying to
I was trying to make him jealous,
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And so, and I said, yeah, really? I said, And I was like, well, you want to go out Friday?
And I said, absolutely.
Boom. I mean, hot mic, drop the mic.
So
that was
funny.
it. And so I went and picked her up. Her parents hated me because I treated her so badly.
Yeah.
And I get it. So I was humble and apologetic about my former life because now I was a son of God.
Wow.
And so that first night we talked about our lives and I told her about what had happened to me and how I'd changed and that I was really looking for somebody that I could see but no sex, no drinking, no drugging. I was through with all that. And of course she was thrilled because it was like,
Wow.
finally,
Yeah.
And so we started, it didn't take long. We started talking about getting married.
That's awesome.
We were going to get married in a year. And then our biology began to overtake our theology.
That's a good word.
And so
That's hilarious.
And so we kept, shortening down. And finally one Friday night in November, I said, let's do it next Friday. And she looked kind of funny at me. She said, do what? I said, let's get married.
Wow.
And she was like, next week? And I said, because this is like a Friday night. I said, yeah, we don't need to do a big wedding and all that stuff. We hate all that. And she's like, yeah, we hate
I
all
was
that.
like, you got a rat in your pocket, buddy?
And so she's like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in, And so I remember me and Mom went down like the next day or that Monday and went to one of the jewelry stores at the mall and found this like the cheapest I could, possibly afford. And I had to finance. It was like $200 probably for the whole setup and for a wedding ring and engagement ring. And of course, her mom and dad were livid again, because it's like, what in the world? What are y'all doing? You're crazy. And again, I understand it. But we did it. And they weren't going to come originally. And then they did.
They had said, we don't agree with this. And no, we're not going to come to the wedding.
And so Lisa wound up coming out. We lived out on the river. And I lived out there as well. And so she wound up spending most of that week before we got married living out there with my
Granny
grandparents.
and Paul.
Really?
Granny and Paul's right next door.
Wow.
And so she was just part of the little family. And of course, they had taken her car back because it was their car they had bought her. And so she's driving around this big old, huge white Ford LTD we had back in those days. And she had a little job doing something. And so she went in. And so she ran out of gas in it. And so Paul, my grandpa, he filled it up with gas or put 5 gallons in. Well, unfortunately, it was kerosene that he put into the car. And so this was the day before the wedding. So when we're supposed to go, and now her parents, the last day, said they were coming. Her mom bought her a dress. And so now, all right, we're going to the wedding. And so we all go to load into that big car that we all would ride to church together. And your dad was there, Jace was there. We're all piled into the car. And we get about 2 miles up the road, and it completely done. Because of the kerosene that Paul had put in the car. So we're just sitting there,
Y'all's life, the whole thing needs to be a movie.
It could be
every one of y'all's stories need to be a movie. The Blind's just the start,
so
honestly.
here comes Paul, who did it. He was in his car. He had a Ford Fiesta that literally would fit right in between us sitting right here.
Oh, my gosh.
It was literally a tin
so
can.
little.
It would hold 4 people. And because gas was so high, gas was so high back then.
Oh my gosh.
So he stops by. We all pile in there. We have 8 people in a car that holds 4 people. And we go to my wedding.
Oh my god.
So you can imagine. So our parents are looking and thinking, this is never going to work.
This is never going to work.
Which is funny because every one of us were rejected by our in-laws.
I was going to say, this sounds very similar to mom and dad's story.
Yeah, their story. Jace got the same thing. I don't know about Jeb. He probably got accepted, but the rest of us were rejected.
Well, because you were there. Weren't you and Dad living together? Or
he lived
Dad living with y'all. Yeah. So Dad was living with y'all when he asked mom's parents, two mama and two papa, to marry mom, and they said no. And didn't two papa come to y'all's house? And
so they were both there. So look, I pull up, say,
Lisa said, "Oh yeah,
oh yeah." I pull up and get out of my truck, and I start walking by, and I thought Willie had left the TV on like really loud in his room because it was right next to where we parked the cars. And so I walk over and open the door to go in to turn his TV off, and he is going at it with two mom and two papa.
Oh my god!
I mean, the three of them are, and your mom is on the phone, and so because she was at Harding,
that is
and
hilarious.
So and I was like, I opened the door, and of course everybody looks at me, and I was like, "Whoop, sorry."
And he shut the door.
And I shut the door and went around, and I went and told Lisa, I said, "We got World War III going on in Willie's room," and because they were they were trying to figure out how to go forward with their relationship.
You know what's so cool? It's like our family stories are so crazy. Like I love y'all's story, hearing how it started, but then coming to Christ, and it all is really around like true radical transformation in Christ. Mm-hmm. And I had a person come up to me after seeing The Blind, and I thought this was so interesting. It's kind of one of those moments where someone is saying something nice to you, but it comes with something that was kind of rude to you at the same time. But you're like, thank you for that. So she comes up and she's like, I have to say, like, before I saw The Blind, I just didn't really understand you, and I wasn't a fan because I just thought, well, yeah, she's had everything, handed to her in her life. And look at, of course she's loves God because her family's perfect. And this is just what she told herself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she's a mom, and honestly, if I saw her out in public, I would never think that. Like, I would never think she would have thought that of me, Yeah. And so she's just sharing vulnerably how she felt about me from afar. And she said, but then I saw The Blind, and she started crying. She said, I have to tell you, I'm sorry I projected that on you and your family. But it's just very rare where you see someone like Duck Dynasty in like a TV show, and it seems to be all this thing, and it just seems like your family loves God, loves each other, and no problems. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But like to show the worst part of like your family's story, and that's not even all of it. That's Peppa Phil, like you hear y'all's story, you hear my parents' story, you could go through every single person. Yeah. And I could too, you know? I mean, talk about my high school, and it was different than everybody else's, but there was its own sin problems and craziness. Yeah. And I think everyone's life is truly marked by radical transformation that we all had through the gospel and through Jesus. And so I just thought that was really cool for her to be like, it was so cool to hear the real story. So like hearing y'all's real story is just so cool because now you guys are like, well, you already mentioned like you pastored a church for so long. You guys are like abortion, like you talk about pro-life and that community and advocates for that. You have a podcast where you preach the gospel. You have kids and grandkids and this legacy, but like all of it that you're doing now is not because you did it perfect, it's because you lived the other way too. And then you saw
I think it's two things. I think one is you're trying to impress upon people. That's why I love that you had us on your podcast. You're trying to impress upon them. You don't have to make the same mistakes that other people make to learn from that. Because what we would much rather is that people make better decisions and don't have to go through that and say, I don't have to carry that pain. And the other thing is you want to offer hope to people who are in bad situations. You just described that situation about our family. One of the things I love to do when we go and speak, especially marriage stuff, is I love showing a picture. And if I showed it to you, you'd say, oh, yeah, I've seen that picture. It's kind of famous now because it was the last night we filmed the show. It was in your mom and dad's living room. And it was kind of a stately picture, and someone from the crew snapped it. It was the last time we filmed. We were doing the clip show. And it's beautiful. And when you look at it, you think, oh, man, the Robertsons. You're thinking 4 generations of faith and all these great things. And then I love popping in the picture right after, which is a 1972 picture of mom and dad. She's pregnant with your dad. And there's Jace there, little kid with a bowl on his head, and me, at like 7 years old. And I say, that's the same family. Wow. But that family in 72 could never even imagine that 2017 family. Because at that point, man, it was up against it, which is The Blind. That's right. And so I always like to show that to people because when you're doing a marriage conference or you're doing the speaking out there, that someone came there that's in that place. And they're just thinking, their last effort, somebody told them you need to go hear this couple, somebody go see The Blind. And you're trying to give them a glimpse that, look, God can take you to places you can never even imagine going.
That's right.
And so, but to do that, then we have to be honest. For those of us who went through what Lisa and I went through, and look, we struggled in marriage. Everything we just shared with you, we carried that then into our marriage and relationship. And even though we were both Christians and loved God, we still had consequences from some of those behaviors, just like Lisa mentioned with having physical consequences of carrying our children. And so that's what happens. And so we want to tell people, look, it's a life struggle.
Right.
But then you always want to use that to help other people. But the ultimate example for us is somebody to get it right, love the Lord, and never stray from the path. I mean, stay in his light. It's so much better there.
That's right.
You know, that's part of what we try to do.
Preach. You can tell that you're a preacher because I love how you preach. I love how you bring the word. I remember growing up at WFR, I just love when you preach. And so getting to sit here and hear that is like, yes, it's so good. And it's funny you mentioned that about the picture, because I remember watching The Blind with the whole family. And obviously there's a million times where you could get emotional and cry through the whole thing. But I think because I had heard the story so many times, I wasn't as emotional watching it as I thought I would be until the end when we played all the pictures of like our family. Then I started crying because then I just saw like the weight that transformation really had on the world, you know, like Pebble Phil coming to Christ and MLK forgiving him. I mean, not only changed our family's life, but so many people around the world's life just by the story that they've shared. And you guys are doing that too. So we've been kind of laughing because we're at 45 minutes on the clock and we haven't even gotten to y'all getting married yet. So we're just going to keep rolling because I think there's a whole nother podcast to be had because I'm learning personally so much. And I think this is just so helpful. And y'all's story, like I've heard it a lot because you guys have shared it at church things. I've personally watched the videos that you guys put out on YouTube, like your I Am Second video that you did, which highly recommend everyone to go watch after this. So I've heard it, I've seen it, but just sitting here and hearing the whole story is amazing. Plus, we're just all talkers, so we might just talk a lot, and that's okay. That's the Robertson trait, you know?
That's right.